On our last program, we discussed Nimrod, Knight of the Leopard. Nimrod was a mighty hunter before the Lord. He was the man who built the Tower of Babel. And historians tell us that he used a leopard skin as a symbol of his political prestige and power. And we suggest that perhaps that is the reason why the leopard skin found its way into the prophecies of Daniel and in the book of Revelation. Gary Stearman is here to discuss with me Nimrod, Knight of the Leopard.
Knight of the Leopard. And Nimrod, reviewing from our last get-together, means he who operates in the power of the leopard. And Nimrod was a hunter, historically, who used leopards as trained beasts to go out and kill other beasts. He was also a hunter of men, as we said last time, because he founded the city of Babylon, later came to be known as Babel because of the confusion of tongues, or Babel. And in Babylon was born the false religion, which we see all the way through the Bible, ultimately expressing itself as the cult of mother and child. And as we read in Genesis 10:9, he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Now, the idea of being a mighty hunter in the Hebrew here, it says he was a mighty hunter, and it literally says in the face of the Lord. That is, instead of bowing reverently before the Lord, he put his face in the Lord's face, and he rebelled, and in his rebellion was born the mystery religion of Babylon.
Yes. Now, I have in my hand the book of Jasher, translated from the Hebrew. And this book is referenced in the Old Testament. According to this book, Nimrod, the mighty hunter, built several nations. And after the Tower of Babel, his power waned, but he still had control somehow over the other nations. In the days, for example, in Genesis 14, when Chedorlaomer and the kings of the world came to fight against Lot, or the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, and Lot was taken as a prisoner. According to this book, Amraphel was none other than Nimrod himself. And Gary, this story here tells us that Adam and Eve were clothed with skins, and after their death they were given to Enoch. Enoch gave them to Methuselah. Methuselah gave them to Noah. Noah took them aboard the ark. Ham stole them, gave them to his son Cush, who invested the skins with which God clothed Adam and Eve to Nimrod. Now, it's a wild story, and all we can say is it's an interesting book. Is it possible that the skins of Adam and Eve had something to do with that leopard?
Well, J.R., I think it's very possible. We can't validate it at this time, except to say this. Those skins were thought to hold a kind of power. They were a priestly vesture, if you will. And we know that in both Babylon and in Egypt, the high priests wore the leopard skins as a sign of their priestly authority. Therefore, this train of ownership from Adam down to Nimrod was a stolen trail of ownership. That is, a blessing or a priestly authority was stolen by Ham, and therefore the story makes some sense.
Yes, well, you know, before we get into the prophecies of the leopard, which we're going to do on today's program, I just want to simply bring this to a neat little conclusion by saying that according to this book of Jasher, Esau killed Nimrod, stole the garments, and took them to his own tent. Is it possible then that this is one reason why God was against Amalek and the Amalekites? And is it possible that the rabbis who say that Esau and Amalek will one day produce Gog to come against Israel as Gog and Magog has something to do with the leopard?
Out of Esau and Edom, so say that the sages of Israel, will come the latter-day apostasy. And by the way, that's all we're saying about Nimrod. He's the father of apostasy, and his life is, J.R., is a literal prophecy that runs all the way through the Bible.
Yeah. Now, Daniel chapter 7 gives us the story of the leopard. This is our first glimpse at Nimrod's leopard in prophecy.
Yes, indeed. And we read, after this, in Daniel 7:6, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And so we have the beasts given in prophecy: the lion, the bear, the leopard, and the dreadful 4th beast, which is universally interpreted as the final revived Roman Empire, which covers the entire earth. Now, J.R., the leopard is commonly thought to represent Greece, and I believe it did. Babylon, of course, the country of Nimrod, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome are the 4 great empires. The leopard empire is Greece, and the leopard here in Daniel has 4 wings upon its back, and these are commonly interpreted as the 4 generals who shared power after the death of Alexander the Great. He conquered the civilized world. His 4 generals, Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus, then split up his power. Actually, in the end, J.R., only 2 of those generals became really powerful: Ptolemy in North Africa and Egypt, and Seleucus in the country of Assyria. And it's out of Seleucus that comes a most interesting man named Antiochus IV Epiphanes.
Yes, he is the later archetype of the Antichrist. He's also committed the abomination of desolation, according to the rabbis, in about 168 BC, when he sacrificed a pig on the altar of the Jerusalem temple. Fascinating story. And Daniel has a reference to that as well.
So it's fascinating that out of the leopard empire, the leopard priesthood, if you will, comes this man called Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who is considered to be a model for the latter-day Antichrist. Therefore, we're making the case here that you can literally see that leopard marching through the pages of biblical history.
Let's go to Micah chapter 5 for a few moments. This is the favorite one for the prophecy that Jesus will be born in Bethlehem, Ephratah, and he will eventually rule the kingdoms. But let's go a few verses later and find out about Nimrod, Gary.
Yeah, this is a prophecy, J.R., of the Davidic kingdom coming out of Bethlehem. And of course, we've spoken about this prophecy so many times, but we don't read on past Micah 5:2. If you read Micah 5:3, it says, "Therefore will he give them up until the time that she which travaileth hath brought forth." Now, J.R., this is very clear. The Messiah came, but his people rejected him. Therefore, he's going to give them up until the time when she who travails has brought forth. And we all know who she is.
That's the rebirth of Israel in 1948. What you think?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
And by the way,
that is followed by what?
That verse is followed by verse 4, and he shall stand and feed in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God, and they shall abide. For now shall he be great unto the ends of the earth. Verse 5, and this man shall be the peace. That is, this man, the returned Messiah. He's the Lord Jesus Christ. This man shall be the peace when the Assyrian shall come into our land, and when he shall tread in our palaces. Then shall we raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 principal men, and they shall waste the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod in the entrances thereof. Thus shall he deliver us from the Assyrian, when he cometh into our land, when he treadeth within our borders.
So this is a picture of the future Antichrist.
It would seem to be so. And by the way, we tie this to Nimrod, J.R., very interestingly, because Nimrod is said to have participated in the building of Nineveh, the great city of the Assyrian. Furthermore, he established the leopard priesthood, which was celebrated in Nineveh, the land of the Assyrian. And therefore, it is in the power of Nimrod that the Assyrian goes forth conquering and to conquer, to use a phrase, in the latter days.
Now, this Assyrian is the depiction here of the Antichrist, referred to as an Assyrian. How can he be an Assyrian and of the tribe of Dan, and maybe come from another nation at the same time?
Because he's an Assyrian in that he operates in this leopard priesthood. That is the Babylonian mystery religion. One aspect of it is in ancient Nineveh, the Assyrian.
Well, it's a fascinating study. There's more to this, more of the prophecies of the leopard, and we'll give them to you when we return in just a moment. In Micah chapter 5, we are told that the Antichrist will have something to do with the land of Nimrod. And he's referred to as the Assyrian that enters into our land and overruns our palaces and so on. Now, this Assyrian Antichrist certainly could be typified in Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Even though he was the leader of this Assyrian, Babylonian world of the Seleucus dynasty, he still was a Greek.
He was a Greek, and yet he ruled that country. That is to say, Seleucus, after Alexander conquered the world, Seleucus was given the territory of Assyria. And his dynasty reigned over Syria all the way down through Antiochus IV, and even past that time down to the days of the Herods, down to the days of Rome, at which time we read that the house of Seleucus dissolved into the royal houses of Rome. Now, what's interesting about this, J.R., is that in Daniel chapter 11 we have the genealogy of the Seleucid dynasty. And it comes down to the prophecy of the willful king in Daniel 11:36, who is none other than an inheritor of the dynastic line of Seleucus. The king shall do according to his own will, it says here. He shall magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods. And by the way, this goes on to describe his location. He's going to plant his tabernacles, Daniel 11:45, the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. This really echoes the language of Micah, who says in Micah 5:6, when he cometh into our land, when he treadeth within our borders. This one who comes out of the country of Nimrod, meaning he comes in the name of Nimrod, basically. That's what I think he's saying.
Fascinating. Now, we are not suggesting that the future Antichrist is going to wear a leopard skin coat or scarf or outfit of any kind. What we are trying to show you is that God traces it back to the earliest archetype of the Antichrist, Nimrod, and the builder of the Tower of Babel. So the Tower of Babel and the future mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, which is destroyed in Revelation 18, is a part of this whole picture, isn't it?
Very much so. And in fact, we've got to reiterate very quickly here that Nimrod founded idolatry as it was known after the flood. He was the man who literally put it in place. Furthermore, he was the founder of the myth of the mother and child, Semiramis and Tammuz, Isis, Osiris. The same myth held true in Greece and Rome. Diana of the Ephesians, we read about her in the book of Acts. And J.R., all this came out of Nimrod, clear up into the New Testament, Revelation chapter 13, verse 1, where John says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. There it is.
There's the root.
Yes.
Of the whole process, going back to Nimrod's leopards.
Absolutely.
Fascinating.
Now, J.R., this is none other than the 4th beast of Daniel, chapter 7. We already talked about the first beast, which was a lion, Babylon. The second beast, the bear, Medo-Persia. The third beast, the leopard, Greece. The 4th beast is called a terrible beast. That is, its form is not given by Daniel, but here in Revelation, its form is given again as a leopard. So now we have a continuity that goes all the way from Genesis 10 through the prophets, Daniel and Micah, through the genealogies of the house of the Seleucus, which came down through the royal houses of Rome and into the kingdoms of Europe, all the way to the latter days. The fourth beast then is recognized here in Revelation 13 as a leopard.
Now, there have been 4 world empires in history, basically 4. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. They're the ones depicted by the animals that rise up out of the sea in Daniel chapter 7. Well, this 4th beast represents the Roman Empire, and its 10 horns, the future development of a world empire out of the Roman Empire. And what it appears to me to be is a composite of all the empires put together, so that this leopard of Revelation 13 has the feet of a bear and mouth of a lion. And this, of course, is a reference back to the original empires. But Gary, it also has a reference to the modern nations who are identified by those symbols. God is not derelict in giving us signs to show us the end time. And so I think we could be safe in saying that the mouth of a lion would represent Great Britain. Great Britain would have something to do with the development of this world government.
And so it does. The dynasties of modern Britain, by the way, coming out of the House of Windsor, which has intermarried with other European royal houses, definitely ties Britain to the other body parts of this latter-day controlling beast. And J.R., all you have to do is look at the modern European Union. Britain plays a major, major role in reunification and control.
Yes, and the wings of the eagle plucked from the back of the lion could either have a reference to the royalty of Europe, the House of Habsburg, whose symbol is an eagle, or to the United States, whose symbol is an eagle. We came out of Great Britain as well. And then there's the Nazis, whose symbol was an eagle as well. And of course, the other main symbol of the Nazi Empire was a leopard.
Absolutely, and it is well known that the SS and various, shall we call them mystics, soothsayers, astrologers that Hitler had on his staff, worshipped the same mysterious power that was really fomented in the ancient world by Nimrod, the power of the leopard. The leopard was an animal that was admired by the SS.
And then, of course, the feet of a bear must surely be a reference to Russia. And it's interesting that the feet are the moving, the mobility of this world empire through the feet of the bear. And you know, Gary, it was through the development of socialism in Russia that the European countries and certain political groups in America and other parts of the world are trying to establish a world socialist government.
That's right. The United Nations is nothing other than a continual movement towards social democracy on an international level. People call it the one world government, the global government, whatever you want to call it. It's a movement to establish international global socialism, which brings us to our final scripture in Revelation chapter 17. And John says, verse 3, "So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. J.R., this woman is none other than the ancient goddess. She started out as Semiramis with her husband/child, Tammuz, and all of the mother and child goddess imagery. She's riding on the same beast that John saw rise up out of the sea. It has 7 heads and 10 horns. This is the woman called Mystery Babylon the Great."
And you know, Gary, she rides upon the leopard.
Yes.
So it is under the symbol of this leopard, the mystical power of the mystery religion of Babylon, that she rises to power. And she rides upon this beast, but is due to be destroyed. Fascinating,
Yes.
as she is destroyed in chapter 18. Now let's talk about the night of the leopard quickly.
Yeah.
1
Quickly.
Thessalonians chapter 5, we're told that the night political darkness will descend upon this world.
All right, the night of the leopard. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. 1 Thessalonians 5:2. But then he says, but brethren, ye are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief.
Yes. Nimrod, first archetype of the Antichrist, and his symbol of the leopard, seen all the way through to Revelation.